What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Integrator Secrets with myself, Andre Hickle Jr., and my fellow caffeine addict, Joey Johan. We're just indulging in the caffeine on this one.
Hyper caffeinated today, ready to fire out the gate.
We have to switch up like the whole camera angle. Joey's not wearing a hat just to keep the content fresh for you guys.
Yeah, camera angle's new, haircut's new, drugs are involved in the pod now. We're just firing on all cylinders today.
Let's go, boys.
Let's go, baby.
Let's go.
Yours is at least natural. Mine is just sourced from all these preservatives and everything, but that's all right.
Oh man, this is great, dude. So this episode, this is the 4th episode, so we're still really just diving into this. One topic that we haven't covered, surprisingly, which is interesting because like this topic is actually why we're sitting here on this call and able to talk about student success and product in general, is the team behind it all. And like the team is literally the advantage that people just don't see or understand, I feel like, at least. And so I'm excited to talk about it here with Joey, who not just with his partner and co-founder Gabe, who is a big part of the team, but just the rest of your team. You guys have just built an incredible team at Default Kings. So maybe just talk about your thoughts on team, and then we'll get into some of like the more granular topics there.
Yeah, man, I think the biggest thing that you get out of a team is leverage, ultimately. And I think everybody as a business owner, you start as on the front lines. You're doing the grunt work. I kind of call it the doing. So that's, if you think about it from the front end, if you think about it, let's just go front to back, like marketing, you're doing all the editing yourself in CapCut or Canva. You're doing all your own thumbnails. You're doing all your own posts. You're doing all your repurposing. In the middle, you're taking all the sales calls. You're following up and nurturing all these leads. And on the back end, you're doing the coaching. You're doing the fulfilling. You're doing everything. You're a doer when you start. And there's tiers. So the first thing that basically everybody needs to hire out is the doing. And then you move yourself to a position where it's more management style. And that's pretty much the rung that we're at right now, is it's more managing doers. Beyond that, you're going to move to more of a director type situation, and you're going to actually manage the managers that are managing the doers. So you keep going up layers and rings, but ultimately what that allows you to do is it allows you to have leverage and actually do more with the same amount of work, because you literally have more hours available to you when you have a team. If you have 10 people on your team, you go from having 24 hours in a day to 240 hours in a day.
Dude, you're so good at
it. It's the quick math, baby. This is the caffeine math, bro. No calculator needed, no pause needed, right? But that's literally leverage. It comes from other people. You can only do so much.
Absolutely, bro. And so for the audience, just because I'm guessing a lot of guys watching this are either in the coaching space or eventually want to get into the coaching space. And I feel like that's an industry where the team structure doesn't get talked about enough. And so for us, like you said, there's 3 aspects to running a business. There's marketing, there's sales, and then there's fulfillment, or quote unquote coaching. And so you have guys that focus in those areas. And then for us, like a big part of it is the sales team. Like we have setters and closers, right? And they're commission based. And then we have a sales team manager. On the lead gen side, we have people that are running cold email campaigns. We have like media buyers that are doing ad campaigns, right? And then on the fulfillment side, which is where I focus the most, and I know you do as well, we have expert coaches that host weekly calls on different topics that our students need help with. And then we have student success coaches, which are really like guidance counselors, if you remember back in high school and college, but also like in the business world, more like account managers. They're just responsible for a select group of students. They're not necessarily an expert in any one topic, but they're an expert in the program and its teachings overall and how to get students results the fastest. So that's our team structure. What does your team structure look like over at Default Kings?
Yes, I think the difference that I noticed just being in your program versus looking at our program is you guys have more of that connector style CSM, right? You don't necessarily have a guy that's like some main big G tells you actually everything about business, but he connects you to the people that do have that. So that's what you guys have, where we actually have more of an expert CSM model where you're one-on-one, your accountability guy. What for you guys is like a guidance counselor, for us truly is an expert that will answer all your questions in the training, nutrition, supplements, sleep, whatever it may be. Like they are your go-to guy for every question that you have. So I think that's the 2 ways that you can go on the fulfillment side of things, is you can either have connectors or you can have experts. We have experts, you guys have connectors, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. That's the other thing as well. You have to figure out what works for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a great point. Like, this is a great distinction, right? Because for us, we have expert coaches, like guys that do the lead gen coaching call, the sales coaching call, the
Mhm.
mindset coaching call, the hiring and operations coaching call. And so our CSM or student success coach is there as a connector to those expert coaches, right? As
Yeah.
like a liaison. And so that was a big hire for us. And I know it was as well for you guys, just to ensure that students are getting the time and attention they need to be held accountable. Um, so like when you're going through and you're hiring people for Default Kings, like you guys have a really strong culture that is
Yeah.
seen from like the outside perspective, even, right? And so like how does, I guess, culture play a role in your hiring process? Like how do you find these guys that are experts first off, because that's pretty hard to do. There's not so many experts in the world that aren't doing their own thing. And then number two, like how do you make sure they're a fit for your
Mhm.
culture?
That's a great question. I don't think you and I have ever actually talked about this
That's why
fully
I love
as a
doing
sales.
this, bro,
I was
because
say, I don't
I'm
think we've talked about this. So I'm always in favor of culture, and that's not only on CSMs. I know we're talking about like integration and fulfillment operations. So I'll speak specifically about CSMs because that's probably where most people need help, and there's the least amount of information available online compared to this world we're in that's all acquisition minded, right? So on the back end, when I think about a CSM, somebody that's actually fulfilling for you, I'm always going to favor the culture over the skill set because I can teach the skill sets.
Mhm.
I can take a guy that has a pretty base knowledge of personal training and give him exactly what he needs to do for our specific clientele to get them results. What I can't teach that guy is integrity, ownership, and drive, the three values that we hire through. I can't necessarily teach him that. You either have it or you don't for the most part. Can you develop those characteristics over time? Yes. But we're running a business. I don't have time to develop you as just being a good human being, like genuinely. I
Facts.
do have time to sit down and teach you the skill set required to deliver results to the people that we're selling on the front end. So for me, I'm always going to favor culture over everything. And those three values that we hire through, integrity, it's just honesty, man. Like, can I trust you alone with my money and my wife? That's integrity. Ownership, even if it's not your fault, do you take responsibility for it? And drive, do you have an unending desire to do the best work possible? If you have those three things and you have just a base knowledge for us of personal training, I can give you the rest. Right? So
Yeah.
that's the main priority for us. And again, I'm curious what yours is because we haven't actually talked about the hiring process before, just you and I.
It's the same methodology, actually. It's I don't hire necessarily for experience, expertise, or skill sets because I know because of the work I've done to get to where I'm at today, I can teach those things. Those are frameworks and strategies that are part of the training, anyways. I can't change the type of person you are at the core, which is exactly what you said. And so, like, one of our core competencies, like we call them competencies instead of values, I guess. So every time I'm thinking of, okay, I want to hire a student success coach or I want to hire someone to be a closer, I think of the type of person that what traits that type of person needs to have to do well in that role. And so, of course, like we have our own values at Client Ascension that kind of like embody the entire team. Like, stop being poor is one of them. No, not actually.
Must stop being poor to be on the team. That's a core competency.
Core competency. But no, like each role has competencies that will attribute to the success in that role, right? Like salespeople are going to be way different types of people than student success coaches. Just as like operators or like guys like us are much different than like the acquisition minded
Mhm.
people. And so I always try to tailor it to each role. And so like anytime I'm hiring for a role, I just sit there and the first thing I draw out is like you build like like the ideal avatar of who this person is. Like they care, they have close attention to detail, they have extreme ownership, they have leadership, right? Like they strive to be a leader, not just of their team, but also of the other people on the team. They're unreasonably hospitable with our customers, which is based on a book we're currently reading. So there's all these competencies that go into each role. And exactly like you said, bro, like that's what I'm actually hiring for. The rest is easy because we already have trainings and SOPs on like how to do these certain things. And a lot of it also comes from like the doing and the experience. And so we're more lenient with like, if you don't know the strategies, we'll teach you those. We just need to make sure you're the right type of person for
Mhm.
this role.
Completely. Yeah, man. See, the caffeine's firing again, bro, because there's like three ways we could go with this. I think the first thing that's important to distinguish for people is the difference between training and SOPs, which I know you know this, but I think it's important for the viewers to understand as well. Like training is the mental frameworks.
Yes.
It
I
training
go
is teaching.
into
Yeah,
this.
it's teaching people how to think. That's what training is. I actually don't have this. I should have this. It's on my list of like we need to draw this up at some point.
I have a
But
good idea
literally,
for the audience on this, but
yeah,
finish your
man. Like
do it.
like literally drawing decision making trees. Like you can have that for your team of like if this then this. You can make them like human zaps basically with decision making trees. But training is how your actual team member thinks. SOPs is just how you do the shit. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a lot of people where I think they get it wrong is they'll go in and they'll hand a guy an SOP and they'll be like, yeah, he's trained. He's not trained. You gave him a system. The whole point of an SOP is that it's so simple a monkey could do it.
Yeah.
So that's not training. You're not teaching the guy how to think. You're just putting him in a system. The whole idea of that is to be able to plug anybody in there to be able to do it. The training is the differentiating factor. You're now teaching this person how to think in real time with nuanced situations.
Yes.
So like that's the difference between training and SOPs.
Yes, and this is how you build A players, right? Because it is, I feel like, very difficult to hire an A player who's like an A player today, because it's a competitive place, like competitive marketplace. You might not be able to spend that much money on them as other people will, and A players go to where obviously the most impact can be had, but also the most earning potential. And a lot of guys in the coaching space are not at that point yet. And so, how do you develop A players? I think it's exactly what we're talking about now is it's training rather than SOPs. Obviously, the SOPs are important, but it's more so focused on the training side of things.
Mhm.
And there's two ways that I've found to train effectively. The first way, you'll love this, is to look at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
Because what your team does is a reflection of what you do. So like you're there sitting on an interview vetting the prospect saying, "Oh, like are you taking extreme ownership? Do you have integrity?" Well, ask yourself like, do you? And also, are you showcasing that to your team enough? Right. And so it falls back on you as a leader, number one. And then number two, one way to do training is through book studies. And so here's a great one. Right now, I have all my student success coaches or just like any student facing team member are part of a book club with me right now. And we're reading this book. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality. And like just based on the title, you know exactly what the book is about. It's like, how do you treat your customers so well that they're like, these guys are insane? And so I know that this is the way I want my team to think. I can't put this into an SOP, but what I can do is say, hey, read 2 chapters this week, and then we'll discuss it as a group on Monday. And when we have these discussions, we've only had like 3 or 4 of these discussions because we just started it. It is unbelievable how simple it is to get your team to think in the construct of like this book or the themes that you're trying to get across, just by having them go out and do it on their own and then coming to the table and they even add to the perspective that you thought you had the full view on, which is just a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Completely. And I think the most important thing you said that whole time was the beginning part of it. It's a reflection of you. And I can speak on this because I know when I first started having a team, like sometimes I'd show up to a meeting like 2 minutes late, it'd be 1:00 and I'd roll in at 1:02 and everybody's there waiting for me. I'm like, it's probably not good. And guess what happened? After a month of doing that, I'd start showing up to the meeting at 1 because I'm like, I got to correct myself. But my team's rolling in 2-3 minutes late because I set that standard early on. Yes. So it's always going to be a reflection of you. And I think that's why being in a leadership position, and this is just pulled straight from Jocko, it's fine though. You have to have that extreme ownership because whatever you're doing at the top is what everybody that's following you is going to do as well. So it's super important. And not to like totally pivot the discussion, but something that I think is helpful to think about in the hiring process as well is hiring process is acquisition as well. So that's one thing. As an operator and integrator, you think you don't necessarily need to know how to market, but how you attract the best talent and how you attract A players is the exact same way that you're going to attract your ideal customer. Think about what a job post is. A job post is an offer. You're making an offer and you have to actually write copy on that offer, on that job post. It has to be attractive. And that offer is going to generate leads. You're going to have people applying for it. And then you need to nurture those leads. And then you have a sales call. That's the interview.
Yeah.
Right? And then you have hiring. And then you have ascension on the back end. Like, do you actually resell that customer? Do you actually ascend that teammate to a higher role? Do you pay them more? Do they earn more within the team? So the acquisition process from a marketing perspective, but also the acquisition process from a internal operations perspective, they're identical. They run in line, and you have to have a lot of acquisition skill sets to actually be an effective operator and integrator when you get to higher and higher levels.
Dude, the moment I realized that, like my mind just went, just like, wow.
Same. That's when it clicked. Like that's when the team, like, how do I get good players? That's when the team clicked. Because if you think about, like, I'll use us for an example, probably, I don't have the numbers. It's probably like 95% of our customers have come from organic content.
Mm-hmm.
So have our hires.
Yep.
So having a personal brand where there's a bunch of people that love you that are going to hire you to coach them, it's the same way with hiring. If I put out a post that we need appointment setters, they're going to be like, holy shit, Default Kings needs appointment setters. I'm in.
Yeah.
We booked 12 interviews in 24 hours when we put out a post for appointment setters. That's ridiculous. And it was free. If I did that on a posting platform, I'd be getting charged for that. So there's a lot of value.
It's not even comparable.
Yeah, there's a ton of value in that personal brand, not only in getting customers, but getting teammates as well.
So this is actually a great pivot to the question I had written down next, which is like buy-in, right? In the beginning, when you source from the right place, like a personal brand or a referral from either a client or an existing team member, the buy-in and the level of excitement in the beginning is very high. The problem is, or where a lot of people start to struggle is like, how do you maintain that long term? You already mentioned one of the ways, which is to give them, opportunities to ascend in the business. One way for us was is events. Like we just had our event in London this past weekend, which was like absolutely like legendary. And like, yeah, sure, like the students that were there in our program got value. But for me, where I see the biggest value, which will actually trickle down to the students anyways, which is the beauty of it, is just having 18 of our team members there in the same room, meeting each other, getting to learn more about each other and what they're all a part of, feeding off of each other's excitement, and then also seeing their students and the students coming up to them like Andy and Chris and being like, dude, you changed my life. So like the events are now like a sticking point for the team members to be like, I want to be at the next one. But for you, like, what's the buy-in in the beginning super high? How do you keep that at the same level or even increase it over time?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I think events are the easy answer for me to like cop out if I wanted to just cut it at that, because it is true, especially when you're in a remote job position or you have a remote coaching program like we do. All of our team is remote. So when we go and do an offsite, like we went and did a Spartan race together with our client success coaches.
That's so cool.
So fun. We're fitness coaching and we're doing a Spartan race together with all of our coaches. It was a blast. We had an Airbnb, spent the whole weekend there.
Right after that, bro.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. So like if you take this online stuff where there's already a great culture and then you bring it in person, which a lot of guys that are working remote, they've never been with a company that does something like that and takes it to the real world. So that's a huge sticking point, which is awesome. And I'm glad you brought that up. But I think another point too is if you hire through the proper values, the ability to ascend that you give them is really motivational for a lot of guys. So I'll tell you a story about Mr. Matt DeLong. I know you know Matt DeLong. I don't know if the viewers do, but this man has started like 14 companies, exited 4, I believe. And he was telling a story about one company he was running. He was running a software company. They got hacked. Over $2 billion worth of credit card information was stolen out of their payment processor. So it's on fire, right? The whole thing is burning down. And one of his sales reps came into his office and he goes, Matt, are we going to get our Christmas bonuses this year? And Matt's like, respectfully, get the hell out of my office. Right? Like, that's the last thing we're talking about right now. This thing's burning down. A few days later, the guy comes back and he's like, hey, Matt, I talked to the other guys on the sales team and we think you guys should take out a loan so we can get our Christmas bonuses this year. And again, he's like, get the hell out of my office. And what he realized in that moment is the value of being a part of the team to that guy was money. That was why he was on the team, was to make money. It wasn't for the mission. And so to tell another story as well, when we've had a hard season of business, I've had to go to a teammate and be like, hey man, there's just not money here. If you want to walk out the door, I get it. And I've had teammates tell me, I don't care. I'll take the cut for now because I want to be a part of this. That's culture. That's buy-in. It's the mission. So I think that opportunity to be a part of something special is really the biggest sticking point that's going to keep that buy-in long term, is when they're buying into something that's not just their paycheck. They're buying
Yep.
into the cause.
Yes, dude. This is so great. It's so crazy because we haven't had these conversations before, but we align on each and every topic that we come across. Like the thing I had written down here is mission.
Mhm.
And like, yes, some people are motivated more by money, but it's always like finding the balance, right? Like, of course,
Yeah.
A players know they can attract higher incomes, but if the mission is so important to them, they're going to stick around even during those tough seasons, like you mentioned.
Mhm.
The other thing too with mission is like figuring out what their mission is and how it ties into what your
Yes.
mission is, right? Because it's
Mhm.
not always just about you. And so like every time I onboard a new team member, my biggest goal on that first call is to learn about them. Not like, hey, here's the SOPs, here's the trainings, here's everything you have to do.
Mhm.
What I'll do on the call is just sit there and just try to learn more about them. For example, I recently hired a student success coach. He's based in Lebanon, which is like third world country. It's where my dad was born. He moved here at a young age just because of the terrible conditions there. And so hiring someone there is it just meant a lot to me. And so
Mhm.
I spent that entire first call talking to him about Lebanon and the culture. And like we're on the call, he was sharing his screen on Zoom, like showing me the map of Lebanon and where he
Yeah.
likes to go and where he lives and where his family is. And like I know right away, like that's what's important to him. And so as we're working, right, it's been a couple of months now. Yeah, he might get demotivated by certain things, but I always reference Lebanon and the fact that, hey, if we continue to do a good job with this, how cool would it be to throw an event in Lebanon? Or how cool would it be for me to come out and visit you and your brother and other people that are actually in the program in Lebanon? And it's like, holy shit, like you could just see their eyes light up again right then and there. And so aligning their mission with your mission, I think is so important too.
Yeah, man. And that's one of those things as well. It's the same way you would retain a client.
Yeah.
It's the same way you would build a relationship with a client. Literally have a notepad on whatever your client portal is that says interests. And anytime you hear them when you're on a call with them or whatever, and they drop it, if you find out that they're a Broncos fan or something, write it down and then bring it up. If you find out their kid likes to do this or plays this sport, write it down and ask them how it went. How was little Timmy's basketball season, John? Like, do that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it comes back to as well, just genuinely caring. Right? You think about How to Win Friends and Influence People, that book, one of the big principles is just become genuinely curious about people.
Yep.
And so the same things that you're doing with clients, you're doing with your team. And I think it was a Layla piece that I heard where she was like, let me get it. I want to make sure I get it right. It was your team. Okay, no, I got it. Your customers are clients that pay you. Your team are clients that you pay. So it's just
They're all
like they're all clients. They're all clients. Just some of them are paying you, some of them you're paying. But the
Yep.
principles that you use with them are the same principles that you use with any human being, and just interaction skill of just being a good human and building relationships.
Well, the actual principle that's underlying there that Gary Vee has always preached that I fully started to understand recently is most people have it the wrong way around. Most people think their team works for them. Like, no, like the best leaders understand that they work for their team. And
Yeah.
that's why Layla's saying that is because she's saying you work for your clients. Your team
Mhm.
members are just your clients that you also pay.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And I think there's Dana White was talking about this one time. He was talking about how there's a lot of business owners that will, they'll go on vacation, they'll leave for 3 months, and they'll come back from their, trip to Monaco and be like, "Hey, how's the business going?" And the team's like, "Well, we lost a shitload of money." He's like, "Oh, what the hell are you guys doing?" And the team is thinking, "Well, what the hell were you doing?"
Yep.
So there's an element, and I'm still earlier in the entrepreneurial career, so I'll just speak from the frame that I'm in right now. And I'm the first one in the door and the last one out. Not my team. My team's not beating me there. The first message in Slack is from me. The last message in Slack is from me. Because you're steering the ship, you're steering the boat. And in my perspective, that's how I operate. Ask me again in a decade, I might have a completely different perspective. But at least right now, that's one of the best ways that I think you can lead a team, is just by leading with the example of how much ownership, how much drive, how much of your own time and energy and effort are you actually putting into this mission? Because your team's going to see that. They're going to notice that. And they're going to take
Absolutely.
they're going to take that lead.
And a lot of it's subconscious too.
Mm-hmm.
Like today is funny. Like we're on the team meeting and one of the team members is talking, and I see one of the other team members just grabbing their phone and going on their phone, and I like wanted to say something, and then I'm like, wait a second, like how can I say something when I was also just doing the same thing? And it's like it's these little things that you don't always notice right away, and you will make these mistakes. Like that's the other thing too, is like understanding. Like I will continue to make mistakes, and certain
Totally.
things that I do wrong will also trickle down to the team. It's just having that self awareness and being able to own it once you do identify it. That's all you can do and commit to. But I
Totally.
think the team thing is so key, bro, because like that is the competitive advantage. It's not the offer or how many leads you're generating or how many sales you're closing. Like all of it is driven by it's a people business at the end of the day. And so like I just feel like team doesn't get talked about enough because it's way more complex than what it might sound like. It's not a surface level thing.
No, not at all. People are complicated individuals. It's
Yeah.
complex. People is a complex skill set.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's something that takes time. It's not something that's learned overnight, and it's something that's going to be refined and refined. You and I are going to watch this episode in 10 years, and we're going to be like, we had no idea what the hell we were talking about.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it, right? Is you're constantly growing, you're constantly evolving, especially in that skill set of just people, because it applies to every aspect of business.
Yeah. One question I'll end it with, Joey, is like, how do you become a better leader for your team members? One practical nugget that I could share with the audience is like
Mm.
anytime I'm in a meeting with a team member, at the end, I'll always leave with this question of like, what can I do to help you? Or how can I make all the things that we just talked about you going out and doing easier? Or what do you need from me? Like these are the sorts of questions that I always try to end conversation with team members with.
Mhm.
And it's just like it's like the service leadership
Mhm.
style. So like, what does that look like for you with your team?
Mhm. I frame leadership as emotional. So people think leadership and management are the same thing. In my opinion, leadership is emotional. Management is more of a logical thing. It's more of just fitting pieces of Legos together. Leadership's a lot more complex in my mind because it's emotional. You have to be aware of what people are feeling and how people are thinking. So for me, it's just constantly having that finger on the pulse of how does this person feel? How is this person reacting to things that are happening, to things that are changing? And that's honestly, in my opinion, one of the best things you can do as a leader is just have that pulse on how actually people are feeling emotionally.
Yeah.
What is the morale of the team? And you can ask questions. And I
Yeah.
think you have to not be afraid to ask questions. Be like, hey, how do you feel about this? Not just come in, make a change, and say, this is what you're doing. Hey, this is the change I want to make. How do you guys feel about this? Where's your head at? Where's your heart at? And they'll tell you, especially if you've developed that relationship, they'll tell you exactly how they're feeling. And I think what you're saying is good as well too, bro. I think going the extra mile and being that friend, being that person that's willing to ask a teammate, hey, is there anything I can do for you? Is there any way I can help? This project I just assigned you, do you need anything from me on it? It's just being a good dude. It's
Yeah.
just
Absolutely.
being a good dude.
Absolutely. And one thing you said there that I pulled from as well is like, don't make assumptions. Like, I feel like a
Mhm.
lot of people go into conversations thinking they know the situation. And so they make assumptions and they make decisions without the input or the perspective of the team member. I think the team is so valuable because you just get access to different perspectives. Like, they are the eyes and ears of your entire
Yeah.
operation. Like, you are not in the same rooms and conversations that they're in all day
Yeah.
because you physically cannot be. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And so leverage that and lean on it and
Yeah.
value it. Like their perspective is so valuable.
Yeah. And I think I can end it on this idea too. It's very easy as a business owner, especially when you bootstrapped and you were a doer, you were on the front line at one point doing all the front line stuff, to make that assumption of this is what the clients need. I've really focused, at least in the last year when I've kind of come off that front line, on, hey, I have this idea for the clients. Do you, the person that talks to the clients every single day, do you think this would actually help them? And they will give you an answer. And you have to humble yourself enough to be willing to admit that your frontline people that talk to these clients every single day actually know more about them than you. And you
Yep.
have to humble yourself. And it's very, very hard to do. It's very easy to just take control and run the whole thing and do the project management yourself. But I think there's a ton of advantages to just asking, what do you think about this? Because you talk to them every single day, and conceding and submitting that kind of leverage, right? Just
Yeah.
what do you think? You talk to them every day. The frontliners know better than everybody. They're in the trenches.
The eyes and ears, bro. And I'll say this: if you're not asking those questions, it's because you're scared to know the answer. It's like every time. At least that's what it is for me.
Yeah, man.
So
Completely. No,
I
that's
love it,
killer,
bro.
dude. Man,
Dude, those are so much
these are only
fun.
30 minutes, dude. When are we gonna do one of these in person? When are we gonna do one of these and just sit down for 2 hours and talk about the team?
We should have done it today.
Oh.
We're going to the Luke Combs concert later, so this
Yeah,
is
we're
part
leaving.
of like client management. Keeping your clients happy.
Yeah, man. This is part of it. This is part of it. We only block off 30 minutes. That way our team knows we're working.
Oh, dude, thank you so much for holding the space and for sharing all of your experience and knowledge. Like, seriously, super, super valuable, even for me selfishly. So I appreciate it. And again, real quick, this is only episode 4, so these guys are still getting to know who we are. Yeah. If you could just share your name and your company information with the audience before we head out.
Man. Thank you for having me, brother. I appreciate you dearly, man. I'll see you in a few hours here. But my name, Joey Joheim, co-owner of Default Kings. We are an online men's fitness coaching company. Since 2019, we've helped 350 guys lose an average of 30.1 pounds in our program. So you can follow me on socials. It's just first name, last name, Joey Joheim, everywhere. And if you're interested in what we have to offer, just www.defaultkings.com.
Hit it /yes.
Hit it /yes.
Yes, baby. Yep. Love it. On the next one.
See you guys.
Peace.